Gordon Ramsay, Paul Hollywood, Mary Berry, 3 of the oldest people on the world, but also 3 of the greatest chefs of all time. The purpose of food is primarily survival, but that doesn't mean we can't fill our taste buds with a whole smorgasbord of flavour and texture. There's a real art to cooking, one which I myself have never mastered. But it's my dream to one day own a 100 Michelin star restaurant, even though currently the highest amount possible is 3. To do this, I'll need someone who can stew up the most delicious and mouthwatering meals. But don't worry, because I have a plan. I will start my own cooking show, using the power of the life simulation game Sims 4. Advertisements for my cooking show, The Frying House, were sent out in the post, and the next day I was expecting chefs from all over the world to turn up. However, I was shocked to find only 3 applicants had come back. No matter, I would skip the qualification stages, and the quarterfinal, and the semi-final, and get straight into the main event. The only thing left to do was introduce our competitors. First up was Schmegg Wallace. Schmegg Wallace is the son of Greg Wallace, the presenter of BBC's Masterchef. Coming from a lineage of esteemed chefs, Schmegg will have a tough time living up to his father's name. But having attended Hogwarts School of Cooking in his younger years, he's certainly the favourite. Next up was Debra von Taschenrechner. A baker of wedding cakes, Debra is the heir to the throne of the German province of Baden-Württemberg. Her parents have paid a lot of money for her to win this TV show, so let's see how it pans out for her. Finally, there was Alan Fossel. Alan is the grandson of Dr. Joseph Fossel, who famously invented fossils back in 1847. Alan lives with his family in Middlesbrough, and according to his wife Hildegard, he makes a mean beef stroganoff. Now that I had the competition, all I needed was a judge, and for this, I would call upon an old friend. Once an artistic great, he went on to become a giant of the music industry, dying in a tragic accident involving an overexposure to dubstep, a genre he was synonymous with throughout his career. He's now back from the dead to judge in a field he knows nothing about. Ladies and gentlemen, the ghost of Schmablo Picasso. The first day arrived, and everyone took their time moving into the frying house. At first, each of them seemed to get along well, but in just a moment's time, these 3 would be mortal enemies. Eventually, a crowd of fans gathered, hoping to get a glimpse of Schmablo, and everyone was forced inside. It was time to start. Here's how the competition would work. Each contestant must take part in a range of challenges revolving around the most important meals of the day. Schmablo would then adjudge each round, and after all the rounds were complete, an overall winner would be declared. This winner shall go on to be the star of my new restaurant. While participating, they would have access to the frying house's top-of-the-range cooking stations, as well as a newly created presentation area. Without further ado, it was time for the first round. Breakfast. Alan kicked things off, deciding to go for his favourite morning surprise: crispy fried pork strips with fried duck eggs on freshly seasoned wholemeal loaf, known more commonly as bacon and eggs on toast. Although this dish may not be extremely complex, Alan managed to add his own flair by performing moves such as the double magic frying pan, and after finishing up, he presented the dish to Schmablo Picasso with eager anticipation. This was the moment of truth, the first dish to touch Schmablo's haunted lips. Oh dear, Schmablo was not too impressed. On top of this, Alan's cooking had taken so much out of him that he needed to take a power nap before the next round. In the meanwhile, Debra got underway. For breakfast, Debra would be frying a side of pork with gourmet free-range chicken eggs on half-wheat sultana bread, more commonly known as bacon and eggs on toast. Debra's attempt did not go as smoothly, as she managed to drop the pepper shaker into the frying pan. This inadvertently made her meal a lot better, as Schmablo's favourite seasoning is in fact black pepper. Unfortunately, Schmablo isn't fond of toast, as he often describes it as the defamation of bread. Therefore, Schmablo still wasn't happy with the outcome of his meal. Schmablo's final hope of a good breakfast was in the hands of Schmegg Wallace, but his expectations dropped immediately as Schmegg returned home having been rolling around in the garden. To make himself more hygienic for cooking, he jumped in the bath, washing himself thoroughly using some sort of self-imposed waterboarding technique, and once clean, he set about making a party-sized serving of pancakes. Schmegg's knowledge of cooking was immediately clear, as he deduced that pancakes don't actually include any vegetables. Schmegg settled on using eggs and flour instead, and before long he'd whipped up a huge tower of pancakes. Schmablo was delighted with this, the buttery texture, the sweetness of the maple syrup. Schmegg Wallace was crowned the winner of the first round, and he celebrated in style. Moving into the brunch round, Alan Fossel had a point to prove, and he would prove it by making some macaroni cheese. His recipe involved turning 5 packets of mini cheddars into a fine powder, then mixing with water, cheese strings, baby bells, and finally pasta. The dish was served, but after his power nap the previous round, Alan was ravenously hungry, and before he could present it to Schmablo, he ate the whole thing for himself. Upstairs, Schmegg was once again waterboarding himself in the bath, so Debra decided to seize the opportunity to make her next dish, a garden salad. Vegetables famously need a lot of chopping, something Debra and her butter fingers really struggled with, and before she could finish her dish, she'd taken so much damage that a few of her appendages had fallen into the mixing bowl. This was nothing, however, compared to what would happen next: the reappearance of Bella Goth. For those who are unaware of Schmablo Picasso's history, Bella Goth is Schmablo's ex-girlfriend. She is an art thief who stole all of his paintings and forced him into a job in the music industry. Schmablo's head was boiling like a pot of potatoes. To think she had the gall to turn up here. Bella may have stolen his paintings, but she wasn't gonna steal his food. Schmablo ripped into Bella with a string of clever insults, implying that her mother was a llama. He then rubbed his socks against the floor and electrocuted her over and over again, forcing her to leave the frying house. Finally, she was gone. You would have thought this victory would put Schmablo in a pretty good mood, but after eating Debra's body part garden salad, he was once again feeling glum. Just like before, it fell to Schmegg Wallace to save Schmablo's brunch time. Schmegg would be cooking a party-sized serving of pan-fried tilapia. He patrolled his cooking station with mastery, but although his execution was flawless, he hadn't accounted for one major problem. Schmablo hates fish. Not only does he think it tastes disgusting, but by precedent he doesn't eat things from the sea, as it's too deep and unexplored and it scares him. As such, after eating Schmegg's dish, Schmablo was in a state of shell shock. The round was given to Alan for his macaroni mini cheddars, and he was over the moon. Now though, it was time for a round that nobody had seen coming. The Elevenses round, to be performed as a specialised barbecue dish. Our contestants would have a choice between this nice modern grill and this Stone Age standard tribal clay oven. It was Schmegg's go first, and he chose the more contemporary option as he set about making some burgers. I'm pretty sure he managed to get some sort of smoke poisoning in the process, but it's probably fine. After finishing his burgers, he for some reason presented them on the ground, but Schmablo was very happy with their outcome, showing his appreciation by grinning from ear to ear. Now it was Alan's turn, and being a man of tradition, he decided to cook using the clay pot. Alan would be making grilled chicken with corn on the cob, and Schmablo was also pleasantly surprised about just how good it tasted. Debra then took to the stage, intending to make some grilled plantains. However, judging by her approach, it seems she was desperate for the toilet, and she had to stop her cooking partway through to relieve herself. While she was away from her cooking station, Alan swooped in with a bin bag and disposed of her meal. Alan was on such a rush after his strong recent performance that when it came to the lunch round, he decided to go first. It was at this point he would make a major error: fish tacos. As previously established, Schmablo hates fish, and on top of this, Alan's preparation of the dish was not going well. Regardless, Alan was proud of the outcome, but upon tasting it, Schmablo felt instant regret. Hopefully, Debra could conjure up something a bit better, and although she was very bored of cooking by this stage, she did manage to produce a respectable pan de muertos, and Schmablo was much more satisfied. It seemed that Schmegg would have to pull off a miracle if he were to win this round, so he began to prepare his ultimate trump card: a party-sized portion of fish and chips. He prepared the fish perfectly, aside from a couple of questionable trick shots, and even though his pot seemed to be filled with soup, he was somehow able to turn this mixture into fish and chips. This was the best meal yet. So good in fact that the other contestants couldn't resist having a taste. So good in fact that Schmablo Picasso forgot that fish and chips includes fish. Schmegg Wallace had scooped in for the win, and his momentum carried over into the dinner round, where he began to make a chili con carne. More flourishes and trick shots followed, and in the end, the smell of the meal alone was enough to satisfy Schmablo. Debra needed to step up her game, and she did so by going back to her roots and making some biscuits. You see, in Germany, they eat biscuits all day. Nothing but Lebkuchen, gingerbread and biscuits, and the odd sausage and some Black Forest gâteau. But the point is, this was Debra's forte. In the blink of an eye, the biscuits were done. But Debra's German urges took over her body, and she ate them all before Schmablo even got a look in. Meanwhile, upstairs, Alan had to be woken up so he could take his turn. Unfortunately, this second power nap had messed with his memory a bit, and he accidentally started working on a second helping of fish tacos. As you can imagine, Schmablo was not best impressed. The round went to Schmegg once again, and we were now embarking on the final round. The confectionery round. Each contestant had to bake a cake, and Schmegg was up first, choosing to go for a blue confetti cake. This time, his cooking techniques were even more audacious, as he juggled bottles around in the air. When his cake came out the oven, it looked picture perfect, and in Schmablo's opinion, it tasted picture perfect as well. Alan, being a man of tradition, chose to make a classic chocolate cake. In the words of Lazytown, you've got to do the cooking by the book, and Alan made sure he was very methodical. This produced predictable results. His cake was probably the most boring cake ever made. And speaking of boredom, Debra was not having a good time. She had chosen to make a winter cake, and attempting to catch up with Schmegg, she also tried a couple of tricks. However, being the butterfingers that she is, she instead ended up breaking a bottle into her cake mixture, then cooking it in the oven filled with glass. Schmablo found this one particularly hard to digest. But with that, the competition was over, and it was time to vote for a winner. All three contestants gathered around, and Schmablo stood in front of them, contemplating his decision. Who should he vote for? Schmegg, who had outperformed the other two in most disciplines, displaying a range of culinary talents, Alan, who did things the old-fashioned way but had an obsession with fish tacos, or Debra, who'd almost killed him again by making him eat a cake full of glass. It was a really tough choice. They'd all been on such a journey together, and as he pondered, each contestant reminisced on their time in the frying house. A decision was made. The room became tense. Who would it be? All of a sudden, Schmablo began to walk away. Everyone was confused, but as he reached the fridge, something magical started to happen. Schmablo began to cook his famous French toast. He commanded his frying pan with the utmost grace, pulling out his signature move, the spatula pickaxe, over and over again. He wasn't stopping, and soon a crowd of people began to gather to watch his genius at work. Schmablo was unstoppable. He produced French toast after French toast, and suddenly it was apparent what was happening. All at once, Schmegg, Alan and Debra began to cook in unison, attempting to combine their powers. But Schmablo was too good. The results were now set in stone. The winner of the Frying House cooking competition and head chef of my new restaurant, ladies and gentlemen, the ghost of Schmablo Picasso.